A week after his 21st birthday, Rhett the robot gets up and gets out of bed in a nice, beautiful cartoon house located in Cartoon City, California. Cartoon City, California is a wonderful and magical place, which was one of the many places where the Toon civil rights movement took place and took shape. Now, it is a majestic and sprawling metropolitan area located not exceedingly far from either Burbanks or Los Angeles. Truly, millions of Toons live in this particular city and work in the surrounding area. In addition to that, many humans and plenty of half-Toons also live in the city. Rhett is a celebrity even by the city's standards. His creator, David Daniels, has had a lifelong affinity for children's media and had a passion for both inspiring children and educating them. He created Rhett after seeing something that his daughter, who at the time was only 3, drew. He wanted to bring her creation to life, and he did so with a lot of hard work and effort on his part. He is an animator, someone who can bring Toons to life. And Rhett is essentially Daniela Daniels' sister. In many ways, they were raised together, even though Rhett is just naturally more intelligent in areas of science and in areas of technology than she is, and also had the advantages of being a Toon, a type of creature with a physiology and a mentality that is very different from those of humans. Obviously, there were some challenges, but this was the 1990s, and as a result of that, many civil rights for Toons were already fully in place, so Rhett, the robot, was able to enjoy a fairly standard childhood, at least for a Toon, while also going and working in the show business. Him and his father, David, were able to create a major children's franchise, one of the most popular in the world. Let's talk about what it means to be a Toon in generic cartoon world. Hi friends! I hope that you're having a wonderful day today. My name's Luciano, I make videos on the internet. If you're new here, I'm delighted that you've decided to stop by and make my channel a part of your day. And if you are a returning friend, I'm so stoked that we have the chance to chat once more. We are doing a jump chain video today. We are continuing our discussion of generic cartoon world, and very specifically, we are focusing on the story of Toons. I'm not going to be going over their history. I want to give people reason to go and look at the jump doc themselves. Instead, I'm going to be talking about what it means to be a Toon, and we're going to be talking about their perks and their items, as well as the What's a Toon section of this jump doc. So as you can see here, here is a description of Toons. This relates to their origin. There are a number of abilities that all Toons and half-Toons get for free by virtue of being a Toon or half-Toon, and that is something that we are going to be talking about in this particular video. But first, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the perks. As always, as I mentioned last time, there is a long and detailed timeline in this particular jump that talks about like civil rights and a whole bunch of different things related to Toon history. There is just so much detail and effort that went into this jump document. It is, in my opinion, kind of the epitome of what a generic jump document could be, and I strongly encourage anyone who is even remotely interested in the stories that I've been telling and in the idea of a jump chain to go and pay it a visit, so that way they can see if there's anything here that they might like. We are now on the Toon Perks section, as this is the first origin in terms of its items and abilities, and let's go ahead and talk about it. Before we go any further, I'm going to go ahead and remind people that there is a section further down in the jump document and later on in this video where we talk about the abilities that all Toons and half-Toons have. That is something that is very important because some of these perks are sort of universalizations of those abilities or expansions to them, and also things that make it so that you have the abilities even when you are not in the alt form. Otherwise, if you do not purchase a perk, for example, the sort of Hammer Space Specialist perk, and you have the base Hammer Space ability because you are a Toon, you can presumably use it while you are in Toon form, and then you lose access to it when you are not in Toon form, unless you have something that allows you to access all of your alt form abilities at once or at any given time. Those kinds of perks do exist. That's just something to keep in mind. So, Comedic Ability Parts is a perk that can be purchased multiple times, and each ability can only be purchased once, and you need to have the parts necessary for the abilities. So, for example, there is a 9 lives, a 1-up type deal over here that requires that you have cat fur and a cat tail. And in addition to this, all of your body parts work the way that you would expect them to. If you purchase this as a human, you do gain the features in question, and they just look weird with your otherwise real looking body, causing you to obviously be part Toon to some extent. Worth noting, there are some restrictions here, keep that in mind, and there's also the added restriction of any 1-up / resurrection or death prevention effects gained here are only active when you have the parts. So just keep that in mind, and there's definitely some restrictions to just be aware of if you're going to try and get this perk. The other 100 point tier perk is a Comedic Acting Genius. This is something that fiat backs your ability to be funny, gives you a number of social benefits from being funny. Very good perk, very nice background perk if that's something that you're into. The first 200 choice point perk is the Concussive Cure-All. This is something, there's a gag in some American cartoons and in some old-timey cartoons where characters will pull a mallet out of somewhere and they'll hit something with the mallet, and the thing that was hit with the mallet will be fixed somehow, or even if it breaks, it won't break in a permanent way. So this is something that essentially fiat backs that, and also very importantly has this added effect, making you insane in some sense of the word, and essentially allowing you to overcome certain effects that may cause you to become insane, or all other negative mental effects. Things that would normally drive you insane will cause you to instead become increasingly loony, and over time, when you are away from this thing that should drive you insane, the increased looniness will go away. Hammer Space Specialist is one of the perks that I was essentially talking about earlier when I was saying, hey, if you are a Toon, you have certain abilities by default, and some perks are just expansions of those abilities. Hammer Space Specialist is one of those. This strongly both fiat backs and enhances your control over your hammer space, and if you are a human, gives you a hammer space that you can access at all times. It's just a direct buff to the really cool hammer space ability, which is one of the big draws of being a Toon, although there's plenty of reasons to take the Toon origin in this jump, even without the hammer space. The first 400 choice point perk is Zap, and this is a phenomenal perk. This makes you immune to any instant death effects and sources, unwanted forced shapeshifting or form editing effects, and disintegration effects. When you are struck by these things, something cartoony will happen to your body, and then you will recover, or you will be able to recover at will. So this is something that is a very very strong must grab, especially if you are not grabbing something like the Mundane Mondays extraordinarily powerful defensive perk that we talked about in the human video that we did. That was a discussion of the human origin for this jump. The next 400 choice point perk is Annoying Teleporter. This is a very, very fun ability that allows you to teleport instantly to unseen locations and destinations. And what that means is that you can teleport to places where people are not actively perceiving them. So if you are within range of a beach, the range is around a mile, and the range is around half a mile, and teleporting takes about half a second, and you want to teleport from where you are to the unseen stretch of beach that you can visualize or that you are cognizant of, you can teleport there at will. Beyond this, this perk also synergizes with some of the other perks in this jump, specifically Hammer Space Specialist, that if you have both, you can teleport directly into hammer spaces so long as there is enough room for you to fit inside of them and they're large enough for you to fit inside of. This also will render you immune to any time-space pausing while you're inside of them. This is very fun ability. It's worth noting that if this is your jam, there is a stronger and more useful, in most cases, version of this for half tunes that people might prefer instead. But honestly, this is just really, really cool. One of the gimmicks of this that is really interesting is that you instinctively know where valid teleportations are, and you can make out roughly where and what it is that you can teleport into. That is very important because of what unseen means in this context. So just keep that in mind. There are utilities to this ability that make it a lot of fun. The first 600 choice point perk, which would normally be the capstone tier and a lot of other jumps, but as a reminder, in this jump there is an 800 points tier, is Cartoon Shapeshifting. Cartoon Shapeshifting is an extraordinarily powerful shapeshifting ability that has a lot of little things. One of the big caveats that this perk has initially is that at first you can only look cartoony, but after a while with effort and practice, you can eventually mimic real objects, people, and items flawlessly, which is extremely cool. I don't think that anyone would have expected such a powerful shapeshifting perk to be located in this jump, and that is one of this jump's more interesting non-utility and non-defensive options, because this sort of shapeshifting is really, really, really powerful. One of the other small facets of it that's kind of fun is that it allows you to be able to continue to feel / sense things from a detached limb or chunk of flesh. It essentially allows you to use detached parts of your body even though they are no longer attached to you. And you can turn this off for individual chunks, which will cause them to turn into a puddle of ink. So this is just really rad. Really like this ability. Back into the Inkwell is one of the big perks that was mentioned when we were talking about the human origin and its perks and items in the earlier video we did on this series. And this is an improvement to the Toon's basic regenerative ability that is inherent to having a Toon physiology. This is also a case where having the perk universalizes it, and what it does is it makes it so that your total health is calculated much more differently, and you are essentially immune to certain types of damage. One of the big things that will happen to you is that cutting you up is no longer an effective way of dealing with you. It can disable you temporarily, but the way to actually defeat you is for you to lose mass and then your mass be destroyed. Normally, if you are a Toon, you die if you lose 50% of your mass, but if you have this perk, then in order for you to be destroyed, you must have less than 5% of your original mass left, which is a tremendous improvement. any things that are lost from you, such as limbs being cut off or anything like that, the limbs will eventually start to move back towards you and to try to reach you. And if they reach you, you are able to recover them. And there are also additional ways of recovering, such as if you take Toon food, if you digest ink and paint, things like that. It is worth noting that because this is a universalizer, this ability is now something that you can access even if you are not a Toon, so long as you have the perk, which is something that can absolutely be just nightmarish to look at. The final perk in this origin is Toon Force. Toon Force is it's a lot of things, but if you are a One Piece fan and you have seen the Kaido fights, it is in many ways that. But it is more focused on things being defensive rather than offensive, and is something that allows you to withstand a wide range of abilities, mess with things in ways that are funny, and it has a number of synergizing perks which have different costs. So if you want to try to get all three of the perks, if you want to try to get Toon Force, Mundane Mondays, and Personal Physics Force Field with P's instead of F's, then you are going to have to spend a lot, but in exchange, the range and the control that you have over this is going to skyrocket. It is worth it if you think that you can take doing the drawbacks that are necessary, or if you are doing something like a creative or some other sort of alt rule set build that allows you to get everything, especially because Toon Force is fun, but it's mostly not as incredibly powerful as Mundane Mondays is. It's funny that it's more expensive, and I know that some people are going to disagree, which I think is reasonable, but I think the ability to be selective about what sort of supernatural effects go on in a range around you, it is really difficult to find a power that is more absurd than that in a jump chain, even though there are real limits to Mundane Mondays that can be overcome by a clever foe. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about the items. So we are over on the items now. I skipped us coming down here because we had already seen all of the stuff that we would have seen in my human video on this jump. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. The first item, as a reminder before we go anywhere else, there is a stipend here and there's an unusual discount structure for these items because there are 50 point items and also 800 point items. So just keep that in mind. The first item is the Toon Tunnel Kit, which is essentially that thing from the Wacky Roadrunner cartoon where you can like paint something onto like a mountain or any large surface with a flat face and you can paint like a tunnel on it, except for the fact that cartoons can actually use the tunnel. All cartoons can use it if you leave it unlocked, or you can designate toons who can use it and they will be able to enter the tunnel and eventually emerge from the other side of the tunnel, which will always exit out the other side, although you can decide what that means a little bit in your chain. Beyond that, if you purchase this item and make it more expensive for yourself, you can also have the ability to summon trains inside of these Toon tunnels, which will cause otherwise perfectly normal trains that are Toon objects to spawn and be things that you can drive to more quickly reach the other side of the tunnel. The next item is the Acme's Handy Gloves, which is essentially Mickey Mouse's gloves, but living and animate. I might be wrong. I feel like I remember there being cartoons where Mickey Mouse's gloves did magical stuff. But this is essentially that, where if you have the Toon gloves, you can remove them and you can have them perform tasks for you that involve manual dexterity, things like playing the piano, chopping food. These are not particularly strong or especially intelligent gloves, but there's a lot that they can do, and they can be very very handy for if you want to lessen the number of inconveniences you face in your jump chain life. The assorted Toon items is an item that sounds very, very, very cool and is very, very cool, but for it to be really strong, you do have to get a perk that is not keyed to this origin. So assorted Toon items is a collection of things that you can use for wacky Toon antics. The big three are the pocket anvil, safe, and piano. You can toss those at people, or you just dramatically throw them into the air, which will cause them to grow in midair and then come crashing down full force onto wherever is underneath them. If you want to, there is a Toon X, which will attract the thrown pocket object for precision landing. So if you put the X in someone's pockets, or if you put it on their chest, then the object will hone in on them. As a reminder, and this is very important, by default, Toon abilities are not keyed to be lethal. There is a perk, not in this origin. It is the Half Toon Origins perk. I think it's called Not So Funny anymore, and that actually allows all of your Toon abilities to be as devastating and horrifying as you would think they would be to people who are not Toons. But by default, all of your Toon stuff will just stun people. There's also bananas. You guys know the jokes. A hole in the wall is the housing item for Toons. It is a hole that you can pick up and that you can move around. You can attach it to things, particularly on the floor, on the ground, or on walls, and when you put it somewhere, you can resize it, and then you can enter it and use it to enter a small studio apartment that is completely yours. It has pretty much all of the same stuff as the Toon vehicle, except for the Toon vehicle can move by itself and the Toon vehicle does not have a mailbox. And this is also very specifically supposed to be a housing item, whereas the Toon vehicle item is something that is more multi-purpose. I really like the mailbox part of this. I think that it's really neat that people will always be able to mail you, and that's one of the reasons I just really like this item. So the next item is Endless Explosives. It is the final 100 point item for this particular origin. It is an endless amount of single sticks of dynamite and black round bombs that you can pull out of your pocket or hammer space with a fuse that is as extensive as you like and pre-lit if you actually want them to be. Very importantly, these do not actually hurt or damage anyone. They will stun them for about half a minute if they explode nearby, but without Not So Funny anymore, these things are non-lethal, and that is very important. The first 200 point item, and in fact the only 200 point item, is the Toon Medical Kits. If you are getting the vibe that some things are very strong in this jump, this is an example of one of the things that is very strong in this jump. The way that this works is you have a supply of Toon medical supplies that work. They work on essentially anyone that you use them on, and they work fast and they work effectively. The caveat to this is that there is a limited amount of medical supplies in any given time in this item. You have enough to treat 4 people at a time once a week, and every week any spent stuff regenerates or otherwise reappears. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Touch the Toon Skyscraper is a massive Toon pet that is a living skyscraper. It has all sorts of modularity. There's a lot of different ways you could use this. You could use it as a housing item if you want. I feel like it's really probably supposed to be used as either a base item or as a business item, in the sense that like stores come and they rent out space here, and or businesses have offices in here, that kind of thing. The 600 choice point item for this particular origin is the context sensitive bag, which is a Toon object that operates on the rule of funny. This is a very fun item, although I feel like it can be really difficult for a lot of people to use it very effectively. You can pull out anything from this bag that is funny. And if you are smart and you understand how the rule of funny works, you can get really, really creative with this. If someone is about to, for example, hit the planet that you're on with a giant Death Star laser or some other planet destroying thing, and it would be funny to bounce it back, you could pull a giant mirror out of this and you would be able to use it to do that. It's that kind of thing. This is a very tricky item to get right, but it is very fun if you know how to use it. I feel like I'm not creative enough to get the most out of this, so this is an item that I wouldn't get. The final item for this particular origin is Acme Acres. And Acme Acres is essentially a hammer world that has a diameter of 10 kilometers unless you purchased it and you also have Hammer Space Specialist, in which case it is infinite in size. And it has a small empty toon town surrounded by grasslands that are suitable for farming, as well as a river and a long main road that cuts through everything or winds around in a massive twisting circuit within the 10-kilometer diameter of the primary area. Beyond the edges of this original space, it's infinite flat grasslands that can be expanded upon. There are a couple of different rules to this item. I don't really want to give everything away, but this item is a housing items sort of for things like massive populations of people. If you find a bunch of refugees and you want to give them a safe space to live, if you rescue the last members of like a surviving species, if you save the people of a planet and they decide that they want to live under your rule, this is the kind of thing that would allow you to more easily accommodate them. And the actual town itself has a number of really neat sort of environmental effects that allow for interesting stuff to happen. One of the biggest things is that while inside of this space, all inhabitants and all things are under a weakened Toon Force effect that gives them the strength and weaknesses of a Toon with none of the perks, making it so that it is much, 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 much harder to die, to destroy stuff, to all of that kind of negative stuff. This is a pretty idyllic place, and as you build on it and expand on it, the stuff that you build and expand on it using becomes alive, becoming tunes, all that kind of stuff. There is a lot to this item. I definitely recommend that anyone who is interested in the stuff that I have said, just pause the video and look at it. This is also the final item for this origin. At some point we are going to go over the general items, but now we're going to go ahead and start to jump on down. I'm going to do it this way so that way people can see some of the stuff that we didn't see before, like the companions and the drawbacks, before we get to the section that talks about what it really means to be a Toon. It's very, 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 very important for people to understand Toon abilities and Toon nature if they like this jump and they want to be a Toon and they want to do it in a way that is essentially in line with the jump maker's vision, although obviously how much that matters is going to differ from jumper to jumper. A Toon is a type of magical slime creature which has a highly malleable but somewhat fixed resting state that looks like something. The state of what a Toon looks like is assuming they don't try to modify themselves and they don't get modified by someone against their consent, pretty much in line with what their animator intended for them to look like. Animation is a difficult process, so any person who animates something, especially a full toon and not a toon object or a toon pet is going to have put a lot of time and effort and energy and is going to have had a specific vision for what they wanted their toon to be and to look like. There are 3 tiers of toon entities. Toon objects, which are in most cases not going to be alive in any meaningful sense. Toon pets, which are fully living beings, and then toons themselves. So there are certain properties that all of these things share, certain physiques and certain abilities, although some toons and some toon objects and some toon pets are going to be more keyed to some of these abilities than others. It is worth noting that some people like to take the view that perks represent real things in a jump, and with this particular jump, I do take the view that perks, especially perks keyed to a like racial or species origin, are going to reflect real world phenomena. So in my headcanon, in generic cartoon world, there would be humans with mundane Mondays other than the jumper. There would be humans who could do stunt double other than a jumper who takes the stunt double perk, that kind of thing. And that is also true for the cartoon origin perks and the half-toon origin and perks and all of this kind of stuff. So I'm not going to go over every single thing, but I am going to end this video talking about the central advantages and disadvantages of toons, half-toons, toon objects, and toon pets. So the first advantage to being a toon is that toons are immune to critical hits, meaning that like something that would like coup de grace a human in our actual world would not necessarily instantly delete a toon. A toon that loses its head does not die, at least not unless the head is somehow permanently destroyed in a meaningful way by like a perk, or is over 50% of their mass, which is the default non-perk amplified rule for destroying a toon. Your body has pseudo-realistic organs and bones. They all work like a normal organic creature's organs, but you're not reliant on them, and they're easier to remove and retach. You have a regenerative ability, which we've already talked about. You can have distinctive anatomies without causing damage to yourself, and by default, you are essentially immune to blunt force trauma, crushing, and compression damage. And that's simply because when your body gets flattened, your body will just adapt to the impact, and after a moment you will be able to move out, and then you can blow yourself back up to your normal proportions. This is a very extensive section because the way to defeat toons is so different from trying to defeat most other alt forms. But beyond this, once you look past all of the health stuff, you have the ability to instantly change your outfit, or nearly instantly change your outfit into something that you have inside of your hammer space. Your limbs and body can be stretched up to 6 times their normal dimensions, or you can be compressed to 1/6 your normal size. Your body parts are detachable and reattachable. You have a hammer space, which is a hidden inventory system that is further detailed over here for people who are interested more in that, and that makes sense. It is a very handy pocket inventory system from something like The Gamer, but it does have different rules, and some of the rules are better or worse than other types of inventory systems. Beyond this, you also have toon speed, and importantly, you have certain types of immunities and things that you still need to do. Toons and half-toons by default do need to eat. They can eat regular food, but they can also eat toon food. They cannot age or be aged to death or revert in time to death, so essentially being unborn. Toons and half-toons don't need to breathe. and they are immune to mundane diseases. Beyond that, there's like some other little things, but I think that I'll also go ahead and talk about Toon Speed. Toon Speed is essentially super speed with some additional rules. One of the first things that people need to know is that it gives Toons a running speed of about 50 miles per hour, which is whoa. You have the ability to fight other people in a cloud of flailing limbs, and you can do stuff like instantly stop in place and briefly ignore gravity for about a minute so long as you don't look down, which is very, 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 very powerful. There's a lot of uses to that ability, and there are a lot of ways that it can be cheesed, especially given the running speed of 50 miles per hour. That said, there are some disadvantages. One of the biggest disadvantages is that most drawn Toons are born with a distinct character drive and character arc in mind that influences them from the onset. This gives them areas that they are stronger in and some sort of essentially character vulnerabilities, not things that you are actually weak to, but like tropes that can be used against you and knowledge that can be used against you. Now, Toons can get over these kinds of things, and a jumper is able to skip past this completely, but it will affect Toons that you yourself create even outside of this jump if you are a human and thus an animator. Beyond this, there are weaknesses like dip and eraser being incredibly dangerous to you. There is the rule of funny / rated G thing that I mentioned earlier, which causes your stuff to not be lethal, even if it should be. There are a lot of ways that a Toon would be able to just absolutely decimate people if they had a whole bunch of their perks and they had the ability to ignore this restriction. There is also the censorship effect and the rated G effect. These are things that I talked about in my human video, but censorship means that it's difficult for you to use swear or cuss words with certain effects replacing those sounds, and by default you are rated G, which strongly affects your ability to procreate and get sexually aroused, and also affects stuff like your nude form. So that's just things that matter that people who want to use the Toon origin should be aware of. There are perks that allow people to get around this, and it's worth noting that not all of the ones here affect a jumper who is a Toon. This one doesn't affect a jumper who is a Toon, although all of the other ones do, but all of the other ones also have perks that allow you to get around them. And of course, if you really, really, really want to, you can just say that those weaknesses don't affect you somehow. But the perks are very handy if you enjoy the idea of being a Toon but want to get around the weaknesses. So, that is going to be it for this particular video. I know this video has been a doozy, but I am so delighted that you all were here today. I hope that you've enjoyed chatting about this particular jump. It is one of my favorites. I might do both general and half Toon stuff in my next video, now that I won't be talking about all of these advantages and disadvantages and the nature of Toon physiology. But I'm going to go ahead and cut the video here. I hope that you've had a wonderful day, and I can't wait to hear from you.